busy, but girl.
How now, brown cow? Ha. Recording a podcast.
This is nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Stretching our faces.
We will join you. We will force you to join the conversation. Actually, come and join the conversation, Munya.
I'll walk away. If it's nonsensical.
You're not allowed to walk away. Hey, our Rangers, how are you doing? Yes, we're back to our, I guess we'll call this like random conversations with Vera. Until Jordan returns to me. Yes, I am Vera, and I'm joined by two lovely gentlemen. We don't introduce people on this podcast, so you introduce yourselves.
I am Mills and excited to be here. I think this is my first time.
No, it's your second time.
My second time, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the colored who
Oh
wasn't
yeah, the
colored
first time I
on our
got
last
trashed
episode.
in the comment section. Okay, hopefully
good
people will
times.
be kind.
Yes, they'll be kinder this time, I assure you. And
Nonzi Munya, ndotengesa airtime. Kuna pa Leopold nataka win. Please buy my airtime.
so yes, today on today's episode of Random Conversations with Vera, we are talking about, getting a job in Zimbabwe. Yes, because I feel like this is a very important discussion that like we don't have with enough young people, and I'm touching on this because Patrick has a play where he speaks about his experience of trying to find a job in Zimbabwe, and I think Munya has lived long enough in Zimbabwe to have an experience of but like I just feel like in general, just like I want to look at, like when you apply for a job. And so I have so many friends who complain about like, they've applied for jobs and sometimes like they don't get responses from, the places where they apply from. Sometimes people complaining, they say that no, maybe the application process isn't very clear. So like, what is it? Is it that organizations aren't being clear in terms of when they're asking people to apply for jobs? Is it that young people, just because we're all starving and looking for jobs, that we're then overly ambitious when we do the whole job application thing? Like what is it? Where is the disconnect between all of these different elements? Yes, we don't warn people about what we're talking about when we do these episodes.
Do you want to go first?
You go first.
Tell us in reference to...
Okay, I'm gonna first be general about it and then become a bit specific.
Okay.
I think it's pretty much both ways in terms of like there are some applications where if you read sort of like the job description, it's very vague and you're just like, what exactly do you really want me to do at the end of the day? Because you might have like pages upon pages of a job description and then you're wondering, okay, I'm doing like 20 million things, but I'm not too sure exactly how it's correlating with every other thing that the company is doing and what I am doing. And then also the unfortunate thing is like more and more organizations are now having, those online
application
bots
forms
and whatnot that will literally chuck out your CV before it even gets anywhere because you didn't put enough keywords. But then the question is, who gets to measure what enough keywords you get to put in your CV based on the job description? Because unfortunately we don't know how much they would want you to put in there without then being accused of plagiarizing pretty much the job description and you're putting it in there. But unfortunately the bot is not a human being. It doesn't care if it's like, oh, we need 20 keywords and you've got 19. It will just chuck it aside.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that. And unfortunately it's also, I guess, an art that we need to constantly be learning to sort of like, okay, what are people really looking for in their system so that we start putting those things. Because now I'm actually been reading my friends' CVs, friends that I think have got, better CV writing skills than I do, and just going through them and going like, wow, because I actually went through a friend's CV quite recently. I was like, this is actually quite interesting, the way that the person structured his CV. And I was like, I can see how it will literally be picked up by a system and how mine are not being picked up by systems. But then again, at least maybe there's some form of, being impartial when at first, it's a bot that's just going through that and then it then gets to whoever it gets. But when they're now, I guess, getting into into the hands of an actual person. And unfortunately, let's say you're popular, like they know you, Vera, and they're like, oh, Vera is applying to here. No,
Vera gets all the jobs. I'm joking.
Oh, the person doesn't like you, and just like Vera, that singer, I don't like her. And then it then becomes very, very personal, because there are some spaces where I felt that was just like, in some sectors where I know if a certain individual is in that interview space, I am not going to get it, no matter how good I am, because of, you know, people bring their personal issues into the space. Because I've experienced it before. I was just like, oh,
you're not one did.
Just seeing the person, and you remember the previous dramas you've had, and you're just like, you know what, it's fun time. Let's just have fun in this interview, and you know you're not gonna get it, but it happens, I think.
What were you gonna say? You seem to kind of agree.
No, I totally agree. Like, people who hire people are humans at the end of the day. So, but I guess for me, it starts with how many job applications have you done? Like, if you've done 100 job applications and then landed like 10 interviews and then gotten 2 callbacks, that's pretty normal. That is pretty normal. Like, you ask, and like, I think people take the job market for granted. Let's start with the fact that there's technically 90% unemployment. So if for every job, a recruiter is looking at minimum 100 applications, if you're looking at it, and if you compare it with like other job markets where like acting or whatever, you go for auditions. Like, I know Tonga Ishirisa, when he came to Zimbabwe the one time, he was like, yeah, I've gone for like 50 auditions, and I've gotten called back like twice, and I've landed 1 role out of the 50, and it's and that's normal, because that's the hustle you're on. Like, if you are looking for a job, it's not like just the one application. You do 1, 2, 3 applications, and then you get disheartened that you haven't gotten a call back, because there's 200 people looking
applying
for
the same thing.
Like 2,000 graduates coming out of university, so everyone's looking for a job. What I would suggest, and what I always talk about with like interns, like the one who's filming this right now, is like, I'm gonna have 200 applications. You need to stand out at some point. So I would say the best thing. I would say volunteer for the organization that you really want to, like, to minimize the heartbreaks. Volunteer for the organization that you want to work for. Like, if you want to work for the UN, the best way to work for the UN is to volunteer at UN Volunteers, because they are more likely to take you up if you are qualified for a certain role, if you have volunteered.
And even that is also very competitive.
It's very competitive.
It is.
Because everyone is volunteering.
Everyone is and being
it's a hack
UN
that everyone knows.
It's amazing. You know, it's great for your CV, but just know that you are also competing with like very insane people with insane qualification. And I guess like what you know, Munya said, you know, the whole 100 applications, you know, 10 and then 2. But unfortunately, I guess the drive sometimes might not be there to really push as many CVs as you should, you know, putting them out there. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Because there's some call outs that won't be that public. And if you're not always on the ball, like really on those
actively
pages
looking
for those, you won't hear.
And I wanted to say, like, most of the times when people apply for do a call out for a job, they want someone to fill in a position that solves the problem. So normally you should answer your responses should be in line with what they're looking for. Like, so most of the times people fish with their CVs. And it's the same CV for every job application they're doing, but it's like organization is different, so your skill sets are different. So what you should probably do is like completely refresh your CV according to the job application that you're having, so that it speaks to what they're looking for. So if your experience is in a particular sector, let's say they're looking for a chef and it's Nando's looking for a chef, then you should definitely tweak your CV to talk about chicken and how you're good at cooking chickens and shit. And if it's a beef, if it's like I don't know, if like a restaurant that does beef and stuff, you should be like, no, I'm a good beef chef, I do this. You should tweak it so that the person who's reading it completely understands that you're qualified for this role. So sometimes what happens is people just want to showcase what they can do. Like, show off, like, oh, I've done this, I've worked for MTV Brace, I've worked for Kango, I've worked for what. But you're applying for a job at Nando's to be a chef. So how does that help us? So you need to, like, orchestrate your narrative. It's a story. You need to write your story so that it fits into the narrative of the people who are looking for a job placement, because they're looking for someone to solve a problem. A solution. So be that solution first and foremost. And then if you don't get the call back, then probably
it is what it is. You're not the one.
And don't take it personally. So some people take it very personally. I didn't get that call back. Like, don't take it personally. Probably for that particular moment,
you weren't the right.
But unfortunately, I'm one of those that sometimes take some of these things personal, because I feel.
Why are you in your
personal? Why are you personal?
Bro, why you mad, bro? I ain't mean to make you sad, you're my bad, bro.
I personalize it, but one of the things that I wish more local companies and organizations should do more, even if because I'm like, I know you can't really personalize every reject you send, but I think it matters to the person that has applied to receive that reject than complete silence. Because for me, I'm like, I would rather receive a reject letter than people be completely silent and I'm wondering what's going on. Because I don't mind receiving, like pretty much a generic, oh dear, candidate. And it's being sent to
all 500
all 500 of us that didn't make it.
Yeah.
But at least if I receive that, then there's no wondering like, what's going on with that. I wish more people would just, because I'm like, it's literally just putting just an email that will send itself to the 500 that have been rejected, because you already know who you didn't take, and you just be like, sorry, it didn't work out. Because at least that's one thing that I really like about, like, I guess academic institutions, where at least even if it's not very specific to you, but you will get your reject. It's either you get your reject or you don't. But then some it's crickets and tumbleweed, where you're like,
they'll write it in the terms and conditions. If you don't get a response, it means that you have made it.
But I feel that's being lazy.
Okay. Let me give my experience. I have had to go through applications more than once in my lifetime, which is a very strenuous experience. And sometimes, as much as I'll try. There was a point when I was actually actively responding to each email where I knew instantly you're not the one. You're not getting a call back. You're really not the one.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where I was like, I looked through the emails. It was like 5,000 emails. I was like, guys, I am not going to be going through copying down these emails. I don't know. Maybe there's a lazy way to do this. I don't work in but I'm just I think sometimes not all companies, organizations in Zimbabwe are capacitated to have the software to do all of that stuff. So sometimes it's just a point of your HR team is overwhelmed. Sometimes it's one person. Sometimes it's two people. Sometimes it's 1.5 people, and now they have to respond to 50,000 emails. Even if it's a generic copy and paste email, it's still just a lot. So I do get that.
Invest in this.
Nah, the other things that the organization can be investing in, that isn't that.
But also, I look at it. I look at this in terms of layers. There's, if you look at the job, if you view your application for a job as the same way that a company would do if it's applying for a tender, if it's applying for a grant, if it's applying for investment, if it's applying for seed funding, if it's applying for a particular contract. You're on the same level. It's just that it's different degrees to it. But they're gonna get rejected as well for certain applications. They're not gonna get a response, or they're gonna get some responses. So if you personalize it at a personal job level, imagine if it's a company and you're going for $1 million tender. If you're going for $1 million tender, you don't get a response.
You are the people that end up shooting up schools.
And for a tender, you buy the tender documents. You know what I mean? You buy tender documents, and then $50 to get the tender documents, and then they don't even respond to you. And you're like,
But I guess it's a thing that more of us also need to learn in terms of how to handle the rejection.
Bam! Rejected! Rejected! Boom! Rejected!
because I've been through enough of those where I now know, how to let it fly. But sometimes I guess, it depends also how it comes through, because like I will not mention their name, although in the play I name names in that particular play. I do name
we'll
names.
insert the name here.
But I would not mention their name here. But I feel like when I get personal, because I got personal with them, because they'd first and foremost, promised like, we will respond after such a number of days. And I was like, it's boring. And also, there were some individuals in that room, who had direct access to me, who was sitting in that interview, who could have easily been like, my nigga, it didn't work out. You know how I found out that I didn't get the job? Was when I was seeing photos of the launch of the thing, and I was like, cool, Brian, not texting my friend, acquaintance, whatever. I was like, cool. What happened? Something? And it was like, oh no, I thought the communications person had sent out the emails. And I was like, no, I didn't get. This was like, like 6 weeks later. And I was like, I know, I didn't get anything. And then guess what happened? Why then? Because if it had ended there, it would be fine. And then after I finished talking to him, I then get an email afterwards from the communications person. And they were like, sorry we didn't get back to you, we were busy. And we found a much more suitable candidate. And I was like,
that one there was a violation. Personally, I wouldn't have it.
You felt offended?
I was like, a much more suitable candidate. I was like, you are writing now this to me, like a much more suitable candidate. I was like, you know what? You could have just left it alone. I would have been fine.
Okay, but question, if technically that is what they did.
It is what they
did. Because it's like if I were to apply for a job to be a supermodel for Pepsi, and then I go and then they're like, no, we found Naomi Cannibal.
We found a suitable candidate. But then to the point of then going a much more, because the thing is, it was like we found a much more suitable candidate.
Those semantics.
So like literally, this is the
semantics. Throwing you under the bus. The semantics.
And I'm like, you were saying, like literally it was, dear Patrick, sorry we didn't get back to you. We were busy, but we found a much more suitable. And I was like, oh,
Patrick.
I was just like,
Patrick, let it go.
I was like,
let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
I clashed my invisible person.
No, like, let it go. Let it go. Say
Munya, couldn't say a match more. I was like, so
you don't feel like your ego got into play there like it does with a lot of people?
It did though.
But isn't that a dangerous place for you to put yourself in?
But for me, because like I was saying, because this is coming from people that because this is people that you know.
I hear you.
And then they like, I was like, match, because for me,
you needed to separate business from friendship.
I needed to, but at that particular moment, I clutched those pearls and I was like, what do you mean?
Okay, so I want to just ask before we run out the conversation, because I feel like this can go on for hours and days, because lots of people have their feels. I'm joking.
Feeling
station about these things. But what's your take on tokenship hires? I feel like a lot of things have that, and it's in the corporate world, it's in the NGO sector, it's in the creative industry. There's a lot of tokenism that happens, and like, what is your take of that? Do you think it's like is it just like a way of life, like how corruption in Zimbabwe is a way of life, but now just used to it? Or do you think it's like a bad habit that we've gotten into, like that, like the business sector has kind of gotten into, and something that just needs to stop?
I think it's a habit, because I guess...
A good or bad one? We know it's a habit. It's already there. We know it's existing.
I guess we have to contextualize it, because I guess for some aesthetics matter. To say like, we need to reach a certain quota of like, let's say for example, for our donors, or let's say our board requires us to have, 51% women. And for some, they're not even necessarily hiring because the individuals are qualified, but the whole, we just need to meet this quota, and then after they've reached that quota, they're not even giving the people that they hired the actual things that they need to do, because they're like, no, as long as we have these individuals in front, we will continue doing what we need to do, but they're like in front, and then that's like that kind of sucks. because I'm like, so, because for them, as long as we have, or that whole, some people in the club are not the diversity high, and we are the diversity high because they need to have that person of color in there. Not that they care about what it is that you're doing, but because
your brown people need to be.
like we just need we need the queer person in the room.
Yeah.
And now that becomes a bit iffy, especially because I don't know if they'll be then respecting the tokens that they've put in there.
I mean, I don't know. I agree with what Patrick said.
Yeah.
I think it never really works in terms of like. I mean, there's this whole thing about gender equality and gender equity. Like, how best do you tear down those walls? Like, do you just do a quota system and say, we're putting 50% women in parliament because they have to be in parliament? Or do we say the best qualified women are the ones that get the I don't think there's a right or wrong answer for that, but I think it depends on the intention of the thing and what you then do afterwards. I guess tokenism in it's like, if we're looking at it on face value, it's completely terrible strategy for any business, for hiring or whatever. I mean, I'd say best candidate should be
best candidate.
Yeah, the best candidate should be given the space, but also depending on the intent. Well, like, what is the intention of that? Like, you can have the best candidates and then they'll all be male, and then you have a problem because now you have created a culture or an environment. And so in some instances, then you have to make a stand to say, okay, even though we don't have particular candidates in this particular regard, let's create a provision. I like the way that they used to do it in terms of like some of the degree programs. When you applied for some of the degree programs, like for law, because they were technically there was a historical inequality that was created by either colonialism or patriarchy, that there were less female lawyers in the system, so they lowered the A-level pass rate. So say for guys it's 14 points, for girls it's 13-12, to allow like for a period of time more young women to have access to those, because some of the things that made them not be able to get 15 points are historical, cultural, whatever. So breaking that system down requires some level of effort, but I don't think tokenism as a permanent culture or as a permanent solution works. In a way to like trigger some change, yes. But in a way, if it becomes a permanent solution, then that becomes problematic.
But like the lowering of standards thing, I have like a bit of an issue with that. I completely understand what you're saying. I'm all for it. But I also feel like it also then like kind of gives like, I feel like it's an unfair advantage. And this is like the fight that you have a lot of pro-men, I don't know, males, that this is the argument that they always bring across, where they're like, well, it's not fair that like then we lower the standards because like women are now like in these spaces. Like if you're great at something, then you're great at it. It's just the same with the job application, that it'll be me and Patrick applying for the same job, but because Vera's a female, we're gonna go with Vera because it looks great on our books to say that. But Vera maybe doesn't have a degree. She only has 2 O-levels. Patrick has a degree and a master's, but we're like, but Vera looks better on paper. So, or in the reverse, that like, it could be like, I feel like when it's sometimes, how low do you lower the standards to accommodate within reason? Like 13, 14, that makes sense. 13, 12, sorry, makes a lot of sense. But like, at what point is this lowering of standards acceptable in terms of we're trying to level out the playing field?
I mean, if like for institutions like these, you're looking at like, there's very little access for a young woman to become a lawyer. So you're like, it's like, this is the only place that they can become a lawyer in Zimbabwe at
that level.
And for guys, like it's kind of like there's male privilege in Zimbabwe. There's male privilege in terms of like you like traditionally young boys are allowed to go to school, they're allowed to excel, they're allowed to go to A-level. So if you have a fraction of young women who are allowed to even go to A-level to begin with, so you have a small demographic of young women who have fought their way, and they still have like patriarchal things
But
that
it's
pull
a
them,
double-edged sword.
that pull them back, like cultural stuff, washing dishes, being told you can't do ABC.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that play around that, and it's not just academic stuff. So we have to look at that as well. To say it's not just the academic stuff but the social aspects of like where are they coming from as young women? What are we trying to do?
Unfortunately, I think that explanation gets lost in translation. It's not really given out because I don't think like UZ is explaining enough why it does that. So now it then has that whole thing of like they just lowered it for the chicks, but no one is really explaining the rationale behind
But
it.
do they
because
have
the
to?
rationale makes sense, but then now because it's hardly being explained properly, it becomes a double-edged sword where now because patriarchy and because the others that are in there with the 14 15 points, they're like, no, I'm better than her, you came in with a 13, so now I feel like the explanation that you gave, it needs to be pushed
Broadcasted
out
more.
and we have like open discussions of it, because it then gives your Shadayas and crew ammunition to be like,
Shadaya, don't come after this podcast, please.
no, enough ammunition, and some of it may be justified, but then I think some of it is just blown out of proportion, them pulling that whole straw man arguments type of thing to just sort of like justify why they feel they're better, instead of understanding why it's the way that it's structured. Not that there's not enough female or women law students that have their 15 and 14 points, but at least leave in that room to make sure that those that had to imagine to go through all of that and still because getting 13 points in sim it is hard work.
I hear you.
And I imagine with all the other things that are then added on top of women, and they're still getting that 13 yancho or 14 yancho, is still quite a big deal, but unfortunately it's getting lost
In
translation.
I hear you. I think that's a good point to leave random conversations with Vera. Specifically looking at the employment situation in Zimbabwe. If you guys have any comments, please let us know. If you agree that companies should send people individual responses, please tell us in the comment section below. If you do not agree and you think that companies don't owe you nothing, just leave a like. Yes, you see what I'm doing? I'm forcing you guys to give us interaction. But yeah, thank you so much to our guests, Patrick and Munya, for allowing me to hijack you for this conversation. And yeah, let us know, guys, in the comment section below what you guys think about employment situation in Zimbabwe and also about tokenism, because I think that's a really big growing culture. Do you think it's something that's justified or not? Make sure you follow, subscribe, and follow them in their individual capacities. We'll put all of the information. If you want to troll them, the information is here on the screen. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. Have a good one. Stay good, stay safe. Peace in the Middle East.
Click, strike up, pose. Oh, swag, drippy, click, strike up, pose.
Clap for what up? He already paid her dues. Word. Clap for Wagon. He already paid her.